I had the idea for the film the night that bin Laden was killed. I mean, I spent most of my adult life overseas as a journalist and documentary filmmaker, and I just had a sense that through the intelligence hunt for that culminated in the raid on Abbottabad, there was a story that would kind of be emblematic of what we have been through as a nation over the past decade. And so then I set out trying to find the real people who were involved, and I wanted to make a film that was told from the first person, the real people, the real story of the full hunt for bin Laden. It took a while to get access and track him down, obviously.
Was it something you were personally comfortable with right from the outset, and is it something you needed to get approval from your higher-ups?
Ladies?
Well, he is my higher up, but not anymore. No, I mean, it was a personal decision. I mean, we're out of the agency now, so I was comfortable with it because I had met Greg through Peter Bergen, and I decided this was going to be an objective story, and I felt comfortable doing it that way.
Marty and Cindy, was there any kind of doubt in your mind about this being something you wanted to participate in?
Well, the same thing after, being introduced to Greg through Peter Bergen, there was, that was good, and then talking to Greg. Pretty sure he would tell the story and tell it objectively and as full as possible.
I mean, it would seem to me that there's also part of why people like yourselves are stepping forward and talking about it is there, and we can cover what some of the details are, but there are a lot of misconceptions about both how the CIA works in general and how this mission and these missions were conducted in particular. If any of you had to pick maybe the biggest misconception, I know there are a lot of things that we don't understand and maybe can't understand about how CIA works. What would it be? Marty, do you have a thought on that?
It's interesting. I mean, I think the takeaway, and a lot of people don't get it because oftentimes you hear three letters and you have your own perception of what that means. Where I think the takeaway, and it goes back to this movie, is that they're Americans. It's a diverse culture full of human emotions, and it's a job. And behind the headlines, there are people whose lives, are going to their work every day. And you may see them at Starbucks and not know who they are, or in my case, maybe at a bar. But the bottom line is, these are Americans just like we're all sitting here today. And I think that's the thing. Some of the materials out there about this movie, but the thing that makes the movie special is it brings it home, and to me, the whole human story.
No, and I want to just pick up on that because I think one of the things watching, and Greg, of course, did a great job kind of putting all this together, but one of the things that really struck me was how much, not just of course, in your personal lives, you all have real emotions, real feelings, real problems, joys, and all of that, but even in doing the work that you do, the very important work that you do, there's a real human element that goes into it. And I thought, particularly early in the film, Cindy, I think you talk about, and Nada, you may talk about this as well, the idea that a lot of people were not really interested in bin Laden, were not interested in Al-Qaeda, and the line I think you had, Cindy, in the film was, someone said you were borderline obsessed, and you said, well, what's wrong with that? This is important. We should be obsessed with it. Talk, if you can, either of you, about those early days and the fact that you guys did feel that this was important, and there were people who had very different feelings from you guys.
Yeah, no, we those of us who saw this, I always talk about it as if it was an oncoming train wreck. See train, stop train, right? And once you see it, once you understand what's going on, you can't walk away because there isn't anybody to fill back behind you. There was just a few of us, and we were all afraid that if we walked away, it was going to take even longer. There would be a longer gap before somebody else came in. And during that time period, we built the foundation of understanding of Al-Qaeda. That is the baseline we went forward with. And so, again, it would have been more years of delay. There's
a little movie out now called Zero Dark 30. I'm sure some of you may be aware of it. I know you particularly don't get to the movies, Marty, so I'm sure you're not. But this is a movie, obviously, that has brought to the fore some issues that I think you guys have been grappling with for a long time. And Nada, you wrote a really interesting piece, I think, in Salon recently that debunks not just the torture aspects of the film, which of course has been a very hot button issue, but the general way the CIA works. And in fact, if I can, there was a great line in it that you had, if I can quote you back to yourself, saying that effective intelligence, basically is the result of sustained collective efforts that spark moments of intuition among a pool of experts, not individual hunches that compel monumental effort. The film, of course, showing Jessica Chastain's Maya character doing the latter. Talk a little bit about what you see as the misrepresentations in the film.
So, I mean, the film does deal with one data point, right? It's finding bin Laden, where across this time period, we were dealing with myriads of threats. As Marty had said before, there was mature threat streams going on at the time. We were looking for other people. There's regional groups that are starting to grow. We're dealing with Iraq. So there's the individual hunches came through on Zero Dark 30, and that's not exactly how it happens. I mean, when each of us collectively, he's collecting information, we're analyzing it, and it's all coming together in one bigger puzzle. So those two pieces, while they might be important, are just fitting into where everybody else has already started it.
Right. Well, and I know that I was watching the film. I even as a layperson, I asked that question because it was, you have, for viewers who haven't seen it, Jessica Chastain is in this black site, learns about the courier, turns out to be, a key link to finding bin Laden. Do any of you give, and you address this a little bit in the piece, Nada, but do any of you give a pass to the movie in terms of artistic license, saying, you know what, it didn't exactly go the way the movie presents it. There were many people working on it. It wasn't just hunches. There were data points. But that, in spirit, the film basically got it right. Do any of you think that way?
Ladies?
I mean, as I said in the piece, I think that the chronology in the movie in Zero Dark 30 is not accurate. And it's hard to condense that time to, a movie. Because who wants to watch 100 people come in and out as characters and all this information coming in? But they focused on the areas they thought were important as they understood it, and that made sense for the movie. I mean, I think the movie is, especially the end it's amazing.
Yeah.
The movie.
Well, not the Bin Laden part, the raid.
Right.
The movie is a movie. It's entertainment, and they had a challenge to take some facts and make it entertainment, and take some great actors and actresses and make it real while making it facts. So the thematic, some of the stuff was it's in the ballpark. Obviously we had some kind of there's the character that plays Jennifer Matthews. There's some serious we have some issues with that because we all know her.
This is the character who's went to find the asset in the Afghanistan at the military base, and then unfortunately ended in a tragic accident. Did you feel there was a fundamental misrepresentation on that?
Yeah, and we thought because she was a very serious individual, and she wasn't as flippant as the movie portrays.
From a character standpoint, you thought.
But again, we have that benefit of that perspective because we know.
Right. I want to wrap in a second, Greg, by asking you an exit question. But before we get to that, very serious topic that I know has been out there in much more prominent ways than some of the other issues, but the question of torture and how effective it was. The film seems to make pretty clear what the kind of the prevalent view now is, I think, in Washington, which is that it was not nearly as effective in leading to the targeting of bin Laden as we would come away from the film thinking. Where do you guys fall on that one?
That's you,
Marty?
Uh-oh, here we go. Here we go. Now, there's such there's open public debate on this, and and that subject's out there, and there'll be those who will never believe one side or the other. They're not going to be convinced, and so the way I see it is that and unfortunately that's a point that gets so magnified when you're talking about the whole combination of efforts and that was involved in finding Osama bin Laden, and also more importantly denigrating Al Qaeda. And I think it's important, and particularly for Manhunt, is to focus on obviously the part that is new, and that is the human aspect of it, And so obviously I'm not trying to avoid your question there, but I'm just kind of giving it back like, hey, that's all out there. But what makes Manhunt interesting for me, and even if I wasn't involved in it, was I know all the characters involved in that. Phil Mudd, Jose, Director McLaughlin, General McChrystal. These are all great Americans, and we were all doing this together. And obviously, Director Tennant, who's not in the movie, but all of these people were involved, and I see all their faces.
And you really understand watching the film how much of a team effort it is.
Absolutely.
I do have to ask you, is it fair then, and it seems like you are saying this, to infer that, in your view, the movie may have overstated, given how collaborative an effort it was, the importance of torture in tracking the courier and ultimately in finding bin Laden? Do you feel that it is?
Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, on Zero Dark 30. Does it overstate?
There's a great article, and again, I'm not trying to punt away. Washington Post, Jose Rodriguez, he just laid it out there, right? I mean, the bottom line is that the enhanced interrogation techniques, they contributed as part of an overall program, and so you won't see me back away from saying it wasn't effective in producing very actual intelligence that we used in the overall effort.
Fair enough. That's a very direct answer. Greg, this is really a great film. I'm sorry we've been focusing so much on three of your
interesting
stars.
ones, believe me, yeah, that's right.
But I do want to ask you, because we've been talking a little bit about Zero Dark 30. Manhunt to me feels like very much the documentary version of it, in that it goes beyond what we can really learn from a Hollywood film. Is that something you set out to do, and do you feel like you've accomplished that?
Well, look, I had really no idea what Zero Dark 30 was going to turn into. I mean, I started making this film right after bin Laden was killed, so I was aware that they were doing that project, but I really didn't know what their focus was until just before it was done. So I was just kind of operating in my own world. And what I'm all about is, I spent most of my adult life living overseas. I grew up in Southern California, but I've been lucky enough to work in film in sort of 60 countries and spent a lot of time out there, a lot of time in the Islamic world. And my whole thing is I just want to tell stories that help us understand how our government, how our national security apparatus really works on a human level. And for me, it's like you can't just cheer the results of the raid on Abbottabad without understanding the very, very complicated moral journey that got us there. And that may involve coercive interrogation. And let's have a debate about that. Let's talk about it. But let's not just say, okay, hey, we got bin Laden, and think that it's all done and hunky-dory. It's a complicated world out there. And for me, the real truths, the real action really always happens in the shades of gray, the murkiness of human nature. What's right, what's wrong? There are no answers to these things, no clear answers. But let's talk about it. And I think now we can step back and say, there was this period in our history, this extraordinary period between 9/11 and the raid on Abbottabad. And we can look at it, we can tell stories about it. Let's tell stories about it. Let's make movies like Zero Dark 30. Let's make documentaries like Manhunt and have the real people talk about it. But let's not get bogged down in the politics of this and that. Let's really have a national discussion about what this has meant to us as a country. Because at some point, we're going to be confronted with another crisis, and there will be people working in the shadows, like them, their colleagues who are still in there now, making these choices for the rest of us. And now we have the time, the opportunity to really kind of talk about what we just all went through and try to make sense of it.
And it's a great film, and I think it's a very worthy mission. And again, I was blown away just learning so much about how this works. We all read the news, we see it, we don't understand what goes into it. And you guys obviously do a great job, have done a great job doing that. And Greg, you did a great job showing it. So thank you, and thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.